Finally, how are GM and Ford going to compete? They already have a $65 an hour labor cost, where Tesla's is $45 to $50. Will they be successful in bringing Tesla's up? Because otherwise, their cost is about to go even higher.
We think their costs will increase. This is naturally going to happen, not only across Tesla, but probably across the transplant OEMs. I think this is naturally the case. Can they unionize? We've noted in the past it's been a tougher effort by the UAW, but and that in part has been because Tesla has benefited from paying its employees with stock comp. With the stock now where it is, that may not be the same types of benefits in the future. So wages are going to go up at Tesla.
The more time goes on, the more it looks like the UAW strike and the Big Three will not only continue, but expand. Jim Farley had hopes of a resolution to their portion of the strike when the UAW paused escalation against Ford facilities. But as of 29th of September, the UAW decided to strike against additional plants, which include the Ford Chicago assembly plant. GM wasn't spared in this expansion with a strike at their Lansing Delta Township plant, which comes off the news that GM CEO Mary Barra did not appear at negotiations in the past few weeks. She did issue a statement last night, though, and accused the UAW of not bargaining in good faith in reference to leaked messages from last week. In her own words, she says, "As we saw this week, UAW's leadership continues to expand the strike while upping their rhetoric and theatrics. It's clear that there is no real intent to get to an agreement. By their own admission, the UAW's leadership plan from the beginning has been to drag their membership into a long, unnecessary strike to further their own personal and political agendas. Their leaked text messages from last week stated their plan to keep us wounded for months and cause recurring reputations damage and operational chaos. It is clear Shawn Fain wants to make history for himself." So as the UAW is trying to work over the Big Three by playing them against each other, Jim Farley echoed his equal at GM by saying in a live stream that the strikes were predetermined, and also added comments about Shawn Fain's penchant for speaking to television networks.
Shawn has been on the TV more than Jake at State Farm at this point.
With the volatile nature of these negotiations ongoing and increasing, the media is trying to wrap Tesla up in the mess with articles like this one from the New York Times titled, "For Tesla and Musk, Auto Strike Carries Benefits and Risks," and goes on to explain the UAW's Region 6 director, which covers the areas of California and Nevada, has received word that, quote, "There is a group of Tesla workers who are actively talking about forming a union and creating the best representation they can for themselves and their coworkers through collective bargaining." Noted in the article is that Region 6 covers the Fremont factory and Giga Nevada plants. And as the opening clip showed, analysts are predicting the unionization efforts at the Detroit 3 could put pressure on the lower base wages that Tesla pays to its hourlies. It does make sense if UAW members get a substantial pay increase that non-unionized factories could raise the wages they pay to be more commensurate with their unionized counterparts. Where does this stop, though? Is it simply ticking up the hourly rate and be done with it? Or does Tesla really face a threat of a unionized workforce? There's been plenty of evidence of a labor movement taking over multiple sectors in the economy. United Airline pilots just received a 40% raise in the contract they approved yesterday, and that follows Delta Airline pilots getting 34%. UPS drivers just ratified a contract that will increase their pay by more than $10 an hour over a 5-year period. And the Writers Guild, they just settled on a new contract yesterday after striking for 5 months. They secured themselves residuals from streaming companies and guarantees for staff size. But the most important thing they gained was protections from artificial intelligence. And that brings us to the point about AI. The Writers Guild was quite perceptive about the threat of this technology to their livelihoods. And as we all know, large language models can generate massive amounts of written content, including screenplays and scripts, with minimal costs. So Tesla, being on the forefront of real-world AI, and it being embodied in the Tesla fleet and its Optimus Robot, AI looms large over automotive labor. Ever since the 1950s, advances in robotics was identified by the unions as a possible risk to its membership base. Back then, there was an automation hysteria taking hold in the populace as they witnessed innovation that was being realized at a quickening pace. Organized labor, being suspicious about new technology and seeing factories refit with automation, putting whole towns out of work, began lobbying for help from the government. It was in 1961 when John F. Kennedy unveiled the Manpower Development Training Act, which tried to address the displacement of these workers. So as it was in the 1960s, it is again in the 2020s, where AI becomes a technology that the government becomes responsible for, be it in the form of regulation of AI or in the form of new laws that support the labor in this country being put out of work. Maybe the mainstream media believes the power of labor can exert itself over Tesla, but what they need to account for is the speed of Optimus's development. It's hard not to notice Optimus's design inspiration. It looks like us. It has 5 fingers on each hand, on their own arms, similar in height and weight. It has its own eyes and ears. It learns by being told what to do and by being shown what to do, with an ever-advancing neural network powered by the world's only real-world AI. How long can labor keep technology at bay? The 1950s was peak unionization, seeing almost 35% representation of all workers in the United States. Now they only see about 11% representation. The conversation about unionization might turn into one calling for a Manpower Development Training Act version 2.0. It wasn't long ago when there were demeaning calls for blue-collar workers to, quote, learn to code. But with large language models coding faster than you could ever hope to, how can a traditional economy exist with AI?